I'm Liz Forbliss, and this is Currents. We'll get the agenda for the Catholics on Public Policy Day in Albany, including a preview from Bishop DiMarzio.
It's a day when we try to show the legislators that we are interested in the state of New York and what happens legislatively, and that we want to show our support on certain things, and then many times opposition on other issues.
Plus, poetry and prose with the wisdom of years.
People with a lot of experience who are really great writers, wonderful, have so much to say and bring it out to the public.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. On Tuesday, Catholics from all over New York State head to the Capitol to make their voices heard. But on Monday, Timothy Cardinal Dolan and his brother bishops will meet in advance with Governor Andrew Cuomo and legislative leaders in Albany for a face-to-face about the issues affecting the church and which seek to infringe upon the rights of Catholics. Now, this will be Cardinal Dolan's first visit to Albany since the February 18th consistory in Rome, at which he was elevated to the College of Cardinals by Pope Benedict. Ahead of his elevation and in the past 2 weeks, Cardinal Dolan has been fearlessly vocal about a number of controversial issues, including the government's contraception mandate and the Reproductive Health Act. Last week, Cardinal Dolan addressed a crowd of 1,000 at Holy Trinity Diocesan High School in Hicksville and did not mince words. His message to lawmakers: don't impose your teaching upon us and make us do as a church what we find unconscionable to do. Should we expect more of the same during Monday's meeting with legislators? Our next guest says not likely. Dennis Paus is the Director of Communications for the New York State Catholic Conference. He expects a more open, productive dialogue in what has been a contentious relationship between Cardinal Dolan and Governor Cuomo in the past. I spoke with Dennis earlier about the key issues that will be addressed and why this may prove to be a much different encounter between church and state. Dennis, big meeting between Cardinal Dolan, his brother bishops, and Governor Cuomo. What are the main issues on the table to be discussed on Monday?
You know, we have a number of issues on the table, but there's a few particularly important ones that we are looking to discuss with the governor. The first and most important being the Reproductive Health Act. And I know you've talked about that on the program before. It's a really obnoxious, if you will, abortion bill that would declare abortion to be a fundamental right in New York. It could have tremendous religious liberty implications for our hospitals. They could conceivably close hospitals that wouldn't provide abortions. It would prevent any sort of restrictions on abortion. It would just be a horrible bill. We don't, you know, we are the abortion capital of the country already, with New York City having a 40% abortion rate. We should be looking at ways to decrease abortions, not for ways to make them more common and more unsafe for women. Mm-hmm. That's number one. Number two is we're going to be talking about our Catholic schools, which, as you know, are in crisis, not just in the city, but all around the state. We've lost, over the last 15 years, more than 250 Catholic schools. We can't continue at this rate. What we provide to students, especially in the inner city, is a chance at a future that they often do not have if they're in a failing public school. We can't allow this to happen, and we're going to be talking to the governor about ways that he could work with us to help save our schools. Absolutely. Those are the two most important things that are going to be on the table. And Dennis, how is this expected to differ from all the other talks between lawmakers and our bishops that have reached a stalemate up until now? Well, we don't always reach a stalemate. In fact, we have made some progress with legislators and with Governor Cuomo this year alone. Well, at the end of last year, in December, they passed a bill that absolved us from the MTA payroll tax that the downstate dioceses had to pay for our schools. Public schools were exempt, but our schools had to pay this tax. We're now exempt from that, as we should be, to be more fair with the public schools. Also, in his budget, the governor has restored full funding for mandated services reimbursement. These are the things that the state tells us we have to do, the standardized tests and whatnot that we have to do, and the record keeping we have to report to them. For the last few years, we haven't been getting fully reimbursed, even though the law says that we have to be. The governor has heard the Catholic people from our network, and he has restored that funding. We're still looking, though, for full funding for some other services. But progress is being made. You know, we had a difficult year with Governor Cuomo last year with the passage of same-sex marriage. We understand that, and we're frankly under a cloud from that. Even now, we're concerned about the religious liberty implications of that down the road. But are you confident that there is room for an open dialogue, given your past experiences with the governor? We are confident. We do believe that, though, you know, the relationship was strained by that. We want to have a working relationship with him, and he very clearly wants to have a working relationship with us. He's made that very clear to us, that he and Cardinal Dolan get along very well. They disagree vehemently on several issues, including the Reproductive Health Act, including same-sex marriage. But there's many areas of agreement, and we have to focus not just on where we disagree, but where we do agree. And I think he can be helpful in Catholic school issues. I think he can be helpful in working with us to devise programs to help transition the people who are incarcerated into becoming productive members of the community. That's another issue that we both have an interest in. Because frankly, let's face it, anyone who is in prison, for the most part, is going to be back on the streets at some point. We want to make sure there are programs, drug counseling programs, education, vocational training, that helps these folks when they're in prison and when they get out, so that they don't end up back in jail and committing crimes, so that they can become productive.
And Dennis,
we hope to work with them on that.
Dennis, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to ask you this. Twice this past week, Cardinal Timothy Dolan urged the laity to be more engaged in political life. Now, prior to his public comments, the Cardinal wrote on March 1st that faithful Catholics should continue to oppose the HHS mandate. He went on to say that we need you more than ever. We can't give up hoping, praying, trying, and working hard. Now, when you read the comments on your website or you hear the voices of people in the 8 dioceses of the state, is his message resonating?
I think it is. I think you've seen in that HHS mandate, that overreach by President Obama on our ministries. The Catholics, Catholics may not always follow church teaching on birth control. We know that certainly that many Catholics don't follow that teaching. But we also know that Catholics don't like to be messed with either, and they don't like their teachings to be discarded. We have a right to teach what we teach, and we ask people to be open to them. But the fact is, as a religious organization, we have a right to that teaching, and Catholics understand that, and rightfully have gotten very upset about what has gone on in Washington with this mandate. We hope and believe that Governor Cuomo is watching that as well, and will not do an even more egregious overreach by pushing this Reproductive Health Act, which would have catastrophic religious liberty implications.
Dennis, Catholics are expected to come out in force on Monday. Actually, more than 1,200 Catholics expected. Now, exactly who gets to have their say with legislatures, and how are they selected?
Well, people register through our website and with their local diocesan coordinators. It's advertised in the diocesan papers. Anyone who wants to come is welcome to come. It's a difficult thing to do, and we really appreciate it because people have to take time off of work and school and get on buses very early in the morning and traipse up to Albany. But they do meet with their legislators. We schedule meetings with every legislator, every senator, every assembly member, and these folks do go to these meetings. Our Catholic people in the pews, they're in these meetings. They're advocating on our issues. We provide training to them in the morning so they know what they're talking about going in. They have a lot of materials. And they just get that message out there on all of the issues that are important to us as Catholics. And
you've coordinated with the Knights of Columbus as well. How is that going?
It's going great. In fact, in that 1,200 number you mentioned, we're not even counting the Knights, and that's another 500 or so. So we expect to have 15, 16, maybe 1,700 people up here. The Knights are going to be doing a rosary. They come up every year. This year they're doing it on the same day as us, and they're joining with us, and we think it's great. They're going to lead a rosary rally in the middle of the day. They're going to have a presence at Mass with us, and we're just so glad that the Knights of Columbus have joined with us on this day and have really substantially increased the numbers that we're going to be bringing to Albany.
All right, Dennis, thank you so much, and our prayers for a very successful event on Monday and Tuesday.
Thanks so much, Liz, and for having the opportunity to come on and promote it.
You're very welcome. Dennis Paus of the New York State Catholic Conference. We'll have more on this later on in the show when we sit down with Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio. But stay tuned, there's more currents ahead. The situation is getting even worse for Christians in parts of Nigeria. We'll have that story and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Liz Faubles. Coming up in just a bit, Catholics head to Albany on Monday. We'll sit down to talk about it with Bishop DiMarzio. But first, let's have a look at the day's headlines. Contrary to earlier reports, it looks like the Diocese of Portland, Maine will actively oppose a measure to legalize same-sex marriage. The diocese director of the Promotion and Defense of Marriage says a committee will be established to oppose the November ballot measure. Earlier this week, we learned that the diocese was going to educate Catholics on the church's teaching on marriage, not oppose the ballot measure. Maine voters rejected same-sex marriage when the issue was put forth back in 2009 after the state legislature voted to legalize it. And Pope Benedict talked with American bishops about the sanctity of marriage. In an address to bishops from Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota, Benedict lamented about the weakened appreciation for the permanence of marriage. The Pope said that the lack of a responsible, mature sexual ethic has led to societal problems. He says this is caused by factors both inside and outside the Church.
Mention must be made of the powerful political and cultural currents seeking to alter the legal definition of marriage. The Church's conscientious effort to resist this pressure calls for a recent defense of marriage as a natural institution consisting of a specific communion of persons, essentially rooted in the complementarity of the sexes and oriented to procreation. Certainly, we must acknowledge deficiencies in the catechesis of recent decades, which failed at times to communicate the rich heritage of Catholic teaching on marriage.
And the Pope called for marriage preparation programs to be carefully reviewed. The bishops from Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota were at the Vatican for the ad limina visits. Well, when it comes to theology, the bishops have the final word. That's what an advisory panel to the Vatican's Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith says. The congregation's head, American Cardinal William Leveda, approved a report issued by that panel. It's titled Theology Today: Perspectives, Principles, and Criteria. The report aims to provide guidelines for theological research and examine the limits of a theologian's freedom. The report states that dissent towards the magisterium has no place in Catholic theology, but that investigation and questions are justified and even necessary. From Nigeria, just when you thought it couldn't get any worse for Christians in the region, the Islamist group Boko Haram is now threatening to kidnap Christian women. A spokesman for the group told an Egyptian news website that the new efforts are meant to strike fear into Christians about the power of Islam. The spokesman says Boko Haram was not going to harm the women, but would demand a ransom and ask that their families leave the country. The group has claimed responsibility for attacks in Nigeria that have killed hundreds of Christians since the start of the year. Here at home, the radio evangelist who said Christ would return on May 21st of last year says he will not be doing any more forecasting on the topic. In a post on the Family Radio website, the company's president, Harold Camping, says he and his company were wrong to predict a specific date for the world's end. Camping says God has, quote, humbled us to continue to search the scriptures, not to find dates, but to be more faithful in our understanding. Camping garnered worldwide attention last year when he predicted that Christ would return on May 21st and that the world would end on October 21st. Well, Kraft Foods has announced it will stop advertising a product during a show that some say is offensive to Christians. Kraft says it will no longer run commercials for Philadelphia cream cheese during ABC's primetime show, GCB. The show's title is an acronym for a phrase that puts Christian women in an unflattering light. Kraft says it received complaints from viewers. In a later statement, though, the company said the decision to no longer run ads during GCB had nothing to do with the show's content. Earlier this week, the Daily News reported that New York City Councilman Peter Vallone Jr. called for ABC to change the name of the show and apologize. And one man has been tasked with a pretty big job, preaching to Pope Benedict. Rome Reports has more on what this priest has planned for Lent.
Raniero Cantalamessa is a Capuchin friar who 32 years ago received a very special assignment to become the preacher of the pontifical household. It consists of giving meditations to the Pope, the cardinals, and the bishops of the Roman Curia, as well as the general superiors of religious orders. This is not the entire year, but each week on Friday morning during Advent and Lent. This year he has decided to make the Year of Faith as the theme for his Lenten meditations to the Pope and the Vatican Curia. He will make a very unique approach, starting with the Fathers of the Church. This preaching during Lent is meant to be a contribution to the Year of the Faith, the theme of the Fathers of the Church as teachers of faith, to the most important truths of our faith. This Lent I'll speak about the Greek Fathers as teachers of faith, the divinity of Christ, the Trinity, the Holy Spirit, and the knowledge of God. It's not so easy to preach to the Pope. It's a delicate job that since 1723 has been entrusted to the Order of Capuchin Friars. The importance of its history is not lost on Raniero Cantalamessa. I let myself be inspired by the problems or challenges that the Church is facing in a particular time, and I look to the Scriptures for a response to these modern questions. His next 4 sermons are meant to aid the Pope and the Vatican officials prepare for Easter. In addition to this, Cantalamessa will also preach before Benedict XVI in St. Peter's Basilica on Good Friday.
Stay tuned, there's more currents ahead. Coming up, Catholics get ready to visit the Capitol. We go into the deep to find out what's on the agenda.
Certainly we are concerned about support for Catholic education. There are many, many millions of dollars owed to us from past due accounts from the state on our mandated services.
Welcome back. Well, as we've been reporting, Catholics are heading to Albany next week. It's an annual trip to meet with legislators on what is known as Catholics at the Capitol. The bishops of the state will be there on Monday, and among the things they'll be doing, sitting down with Governor Andrew Cuomo. Then Catholics from across the state, priests, religious, and lay people, will head up on Tuesday to make their voices heard. Our news director, Ed Wilkinson, had a chance to hear more about it when he spoke with Bishop DiMarzio for this week's Into the Deep.
Bishop, thanks for being with us again.
Always good to be here.
Next Tuesday, Catholics of the state will converge on Albany, Catholics at the Capitol Day. Why do we do this? It's a lobbying day, basically.
It's a lobbying day. It's a day when we try to show the legislators that we are interested in the state of New York and what happens legislatively, and that we want to show our support on certain things, and then many times opposition on other issues.
Yeah. Some people might say, what effect does it have going up there? I mean, certainly last year we got into a problem up there in Albany, and politics didn't seem to work the way we wanted it to work because there was some like last-minute deals done. What kind of an effect do you think the Catholics can have by going up one day a year like this?
Well, let's put it this way: it can't hurt. How much it helps, it depends on the issue, on the time, on the way the wind is blowing, because that's politics. But to be involved is part of what politics is about, part of what our citizen responsibilities are. So to make ourselves known and to bring forth our platform, which we do have every year, the State Catholic Conference does come up with legislative priorities and initiatives. So that's important. That's our responsibility to do this.
What are some of the key issues that Catholics will be talking about this year in Albany?
Well, this year, looking at some of the budget cuts and how they affect the poor, that's certainly one of the things we are concerned about. There are other issues of funding cuts that really need to be looked at more carefully. Certainly we are concerned about support for Catholic education. There are many, many millions of dollars owed to us from past due accounts from the state on our mandated services. So there are enough issues that we need to speak to the legislators about.
Some of that money, I believe, has been put back into the budget for next year for the mandated services?
I think so, but we have yet to receive it.
Yeah. Is there going to be a meeting with the governor again this year?
There is one scheduled.
Last year was on again, off again, but it was on again finally.
I think this year looks like it's pretty solid.
What happens during the day when you go up there? You all get together, and first there's a mass, a prayer service first, right?
Actually, we go for 2 days. It's an overnight. The first day we will meet with the governor. We've scheduled for the Diocese of Brooklyn a meeting with our legislators, whoever wishes to come to a little reception. Then Catholic Charities has a reception at the evening. The next day, we are able to see individual legislators in their offices about issues that we might want to make ourselves known about. There is a prayer service. There is a mass. There is a rosary rally that the Knights of Columbus are sponsoring during the same time. So there are multiple events, and usually there's several thousands of people that do come to the lobby day.
I think that's new, the Knights of Columbus. I think they used to have their own.
Yes, they used to have their separate event, but we've asked to join together with them join our forces.
Yeah, and now there'll be a delegation going up from Brooklyn and Queens. It's not just bishops and priests who go up.
No, we want lay people to come and to visit our legislators. It's very important.
Mm-hmm. And some of the people, will there be other diocesan leaders like from Catholic Charities and officers?
Catholic Charities leaders are always there, mostly diocesan bishops will come. Unfortunately, this year there's a coincidence between the administrative board of the Bishops' Conference and this, so our Cardinal Dolan will only be able to stay the first day, and a couple of other bishops are involved in that, so it is an issue.
So what at the very least would you hope would come out of a day like this?
Well, again, it's presence. Sometimes you need to be places so people are seen, so you can show that we are interested, that there is support, and there are votes behind our issues.
Will the same-sex marriage issue come up again, do you think?
Probably not. It seems, unfortunately, to be resolved right now.
Yeah, but we're still not happy about that, right?
We're not happy about it, no.
Okay. Bishop, thanks so much for taking the time for being with us today.
And stay tuned. There's more currents ahead. When we return, a group of seniors translates life experiences into art.
I became 91 in December, and I have memories that no young person could have because those things were not going on when you were born.
Finally tonight, as the saying goes, the pen is mightier than the sword. Words have power, and what you say and how you say it can even elevate your words to art. It's something that a group of seniors at St. Francis College has learned. They've taken part in a creative writing class at the school that has allowed them to turn what they have to say into poetry and prose. They recently had a chance to share their work in a public setting.
I asked her how she learned to climb a tree so tall. She said she watched her pussycat, and after many trials, she finally did capture a little of his style.
This is a reading of my creative writing students from my senior citizen class, which the school is kind enough to offer to the senior citizens in the community. And it's a wonderful opportunity to people with a lot of experience who are really great writers, wonderful, have so much to say and bring it out to the public.
You are long dead. I never fish. But if I hold the shell to my ear, it whispers your name.
But last year we decided to do a theme of love. It was Valentine's Day. This year we were a little bit post-Valentine's Day, so I decided to kind of add to the theme, although I kept the original love idea, but added hope and destiny. Those three ideas can cover quite a bit of what my students like to talk about, and they bring their experience into it, so it really works quite well.
Ma, it's really you? Yeah, it's me. Who else?
I would call it the roundness of experience. It's time. And in my case, I carry time within myself. Hopefully, some of that time has given me the wisdom that I would not have had as a younger person. And the sensitivity and the understanding of humanity in a way that I could not possibly have understood it before. It's not possible. I don't think I could have written the story I presented today as a younger person because I didn't have the perspective.
I became 91 in December, and I have memories that no young person could have because those things were not going on when you were born. And so I must write. I have depression stories that I must tell about the Iceman in his horse-drawn wagon and the various things that we did when we were kids.
I tried not to get on my soapbox. No success. I was raring to go.
I've been doing this class now for about 10 years, and it's only about 3 years ago that I was able to do a public reading and to have their voices heard.
Well, I think Mitch does a terrific job in terms of relating to the people in the class and helping them along with it if there is any need. He was mesmerized as he watched his teenage self. He was an athlete.
After it's over, I feel as if I've been freed because the commitment of reading my material in a way that it is understood and appreciated is ever constant on my mind.
I really like when people come up to me and say they love my poetry and they really enjoyed that they heard everything I said. And I have one poem published, but I'd like to have them in a book of poems. It would be great to make some money on them.
I had always wanted to write. When I was a little girl, I said I was going to be a writer.
I felt I had the imagination to do it, and I liked using my imagination in developing stories.
I am their teacher. I help guide them along. I give them assignments, but they take it and they run with it. They teach me more than I can ever teach them, and I feel very fortunate to be able to do this.
That is all for this edition of Currents. Be sure to visit us online at currentsny.net. You can also connect with us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Liz Faublas. Thank you for watching and have a good night.